third speaker is Cristiano Carlutti, Vice President of Tesla Company. Cristiano, welcome. And finally, Raul-David Poblano from MIT Media Lab, working on smart grids. Hi, good morning. Well, finally, I introduce the moderator of this session, that's Guillermo Ricarte, the Managing Director of CREAFUTUR. Guillermo?
Thank you.
When you
want. Well, I think I'm okay. Okay, so good morning to everyone. I'll be the chairman of this panel, and I have the privilege to be with the speakers that were just introduced. And well, our goal for the next 45 to 50 minutes will be to get from you some of your thoughts and vision for the future regarding, I think, mobility in general and the electrical vehicle in particular. And I guess most of you will agree with me that we're entering a kind of a new era and living what I'd say a change in paradigm regarding the way we use transportation means. And we probably could compare this change with some changes, for instance, in communications that we've lived very recently that have changed completely the scenario, both from the supply and the demand side. The truth is that we face an environmental issue, and it seems that we all agree on this now. So oil will become more and more expensive or difficult to get, and we have to reduce local emissions. And that's why the electric vehicle came in the first place. But there are other things, other issues related to mobility that I think need to be addressed as well. And we're living today already some cities and countries having specific problems on capacity in their cities, congestion, traffic jams, parking space. It's becoming a nightmare in some cities. So these cities and some countries all over the world are starting to move fast, implementing changes. I'd say just a couple of figures. In Spain, for instance, the government recently announced almost a 600 million euro investment to help develop the electric vehicle in Spain. And here in Barcelona and in the Catalonia area, we have the LEAF project, which stands for the logistics for the implementation of the electric vehicle. That it's a shared initiative between the city council and the regional government, and promotes initiatives and projects that have the electric vehicle in its core. So let's go straight to the first questions, and my first question will be a generic one, but probably one that it's being asked already now for some time. Will we be driving an electric vehicle soon? And I mean, when will we have the electric vehicle, in the streets, and bought or purchased by the mass market? Which are the forecasts? And maybe I start by Mr. Olivier Paturet from Renault Nissan here. What are your figures? What are your forecasts on this for the future? And probably you'll tell us what needs to be done so that these forecasts become a reality.
Thank you, Guillermo. And the question of volume, I think, a question that we get being asked almost on a daily basis. But in my opinion, it's mainly a question of offer. And one of your questions is when will electric cars become a reality? For us, is next year. We were just talking about it, and it's coming. So next year, we will be driving electric cars in Barcelona. We will be driving electric cars in most cities and countries in Europe. It's becoming a reality. Now, of course, in terms of offer, one of the points is that we're talking about mass production. So we passed the stage of experiment and test and so on. So this is mass production to real customers, something that we have in common with other manufacturers. And our view also, it needs to become affordable. So that's the second point, mass marketing, affordability. So we want to make sure that the car is affordable. So in terms of offer, yes, it's becoming a reality. Yes, it will be here next year, and it will be an affordable solution. Now, in terms of demand for electric vehicle, our view is that the demand for electric vehicle needs to be is driven by a combination of factors. The first one certainly is the availability of incentive, and I know you mentioned that plans that are available in Spain, but other countries, so the availability of incentive. The second point is infrastructure. Just had a brief discussion on the importance of infrastructure. Let me just give you an example. I lived in the Nordic countries for quite a few years, and if some of you go to Copenhagen and see the number of bicycles available in Copenhagen, it certainly comes as no surprise. And the reason why there are so many bicycles and people enjoying using the bicycle is because there is a dedicated infrastructure. Once there is a dedicated infrastructure, a good infrastructure, it just makes the quantum leap in the volume assessment of what exactly this market can be. And finally, our view is also that in terms of demand, the electric vehicle need to be easy to use, safe, and that will generate a demand. So as a result, basically our view within the Renault-Nissan Alliance is the volume assessment for EV could be 10% of the total industry in 2020, as an example. By total industry, let's take a market the size of Spain, roughly 1.2, 1.5 million. That gives you a size of what could be the market. But if the infrastructure, if we manage to pull together the infrastructure, this number can be doubled easily, and in some cities go to 20% or higher. And at least I'm sure that's some of the objectives that we have in Spain. But one of the things that we've done very early in the process to capture actual customer demand from customer, and we have websites that today in Japan, in the US, and in Europe capture the actual demand. And I mean, we made some preliminary press release on the level of demand, and it's quite high. We're very optimistic. We're very optimistic on the actual demand from customer for EV. So maybe we'll double these numbers and make it happen.
Okay, so that's great, and you gave actual figures. We're happy to hear that, and I think 10% or even 20%, it's big numbers. So we're talking about mass market, but of course there will be opportunities in other markets, in other niche of markets, and I think we have here a good example of a company that actually addresses to probably a different type of customer that is there, that can be, I think, very profitable. So we have Mr. Cristiano Carlutti from Tesla here with us, Tesla Motors, and you have the car around here. I think I recommend you to go and see the car because it looks fantastic. So tell us a bit about this, about your customers, about the car and your customers. I think the first Tesla in Spain has been sold very recently. Unfortunately, I think it's not a Spaniard who bought the Tesla, but it will come. So what's the feedback, and how do you see the car evolution in the future?
Well, it's true that right now, as a company, since we are manufacturing a sport roadster, we cannot be considered a mass market manufacturer. That's where we are starting from, and actually, we started from a high-priced product. But that's because technology was expensive. As all the technology, new technology, when they're introduced, are pretty expensive. I completely agree with Olivier that affordability is one of the key drivers of the enlargement and development of this market. Our customer right now who buy a roadster may be people passionate about sports car, mostly because we are talking about cars. We are not selling technology here. We are talking about a sports car, so most of them make an emotional purchase. And then on top of that, it's green, it's environmental friendly, and like that. But the success is really that it's a good car. Nobody wants to buy a bad car simply because it's electric and then make them feel better. So the quality of the product, in my opinion, is really the key driver. Now, concerning affordability, of course, we don't have the size of a much bigger OEM, but our aim is really to bring the electric vehicle to a larger audience. That's why we started from a high-end product, and we're bringing, in 2 years' time, a more affordable product, which is a four-door sports sedan. Now, our customer right now don't suffer really about the lack of infrastructure, but that's probably because of different reasons. One of them is the fact that the car has a very high range. Another one is that really the infrastructure, in a way, is already there for some certain point of view, because you can plug in the car, even at home. So, I mean, there's a standard, that's electricity, it's available. Now, of course, if we're talking about enlarging the market, yes, we will make it even more available. But really, most of the customers I'm talking to, when I ask them how long does it take to recharge the battery, do you suffer that, they simply tell me, I go home, I plug it in 5 seconds, and I forget about it as I plug in my iPhone. So this is the future, really, and we need to develop the market further. We need to bring more product. I believe that one of the issues we have here is the lack of offer, as it was mentioned, Olivier. The demand is there. We have an incredible demand out there, not from all segments of the market. And here we go back talking about the customer. The automotive market is huge. Is divided in different segments. Some segments are ready to buy electric now. And some segments do not have range anxiety. Talking about, for example, fleet of vans. They perfectly know how many kilometers every van runs every day. They don't have range anxiety. And they plug in when they go back to their park at night. And there's a huge demand which is already there. There's no offer. That's, in my opinion, one of the big issues we have here, because in the year 2010, there are very few car manufacturers offering product. Now, it's very good that some more manufacturers are moving in, enlarging the offer. So really, we're talking about enlarging the pie, not competing for a niche segment of the market. We want to make everybody, we want to make the market much bigger, really.
That's great. So it's very also encouraging to know that there's a big demand out there. So we heard a couple of companies from the private sector. Let's hear a bit about what's being done from a research standpoint. And one of the centers of research in mobility nowadays, we find it at the MIT in Boston, and we have here with us today Mr. Raul-David Poblano from the MIT, from the Media Lab. So Raul-David, if you could also briefly explain what you do at the Media Lab, what's the Media Lab about, and the whole Smart Cities project.
Okay. Thank you, Guillermo, and good morning, everybody, again. So the Smart Cities Group is a research group at the MIT Media Lab that focuses on its efforts to develop technology and products that enable cities to become more intelligent, sustainable, livable, and equitable communities. So one of our major areas of research is on sustainable personal urban mobility systems, which are essentially a fleet of lightweight electric vehicles that include everything from electric bicycles and electric scooters to a unique omnidirectional folding electric city car that is being developed for production as a part of a Spanish startup company named Rico Mobility and Driving Mobility, excuse me. In total, these electric vehicles make up a mobility on-demand system that is a one-way shared use rental network that enables users to pick up and drop off vehicles at designated charging locations ubiquitously distributed throughout the city. This personal urban mobility system research is based on 4 ideas illustrated by Professor Bill Mitchell in his recent book, Reinventing the Automobile. The first idea is that we must transform the DNA of our vehicles in a way that allows us to move away from purely mechanical, standalone entities and towards fully electronic, mechatronic mobility devices that are interconnected and well aware of their environments via sensing and telecommunications. The second idea is that we also must we must continue to develop the mobility internet, which enables vehicles to collect, process, and share enormous amounts of location-based information in a better, in an effort to better manage traffic flow, predict travel times, and create new social networks. The third idea that our research is based on is that we must integrate electric vehicles with smart electric grids that utilize uninterrupted power supplies to store clean, renewable energy for the purpose of load balancing and rapid charging via dynamic pricing strategies for optimal grid efficiency. And finally, our fourth idea, which our research is based on, is that we must provide real-time control capabilities and dynamic pricing models that enable us to manage the market externalities that affect the supply and demand of urban mobility and energy systems.
Great. So more intelligent cities, mobility on demand, changing the DNA. So it looks like something is going to change, and we are seeing already not only the traditional or the players that have been there for a long time adapting and changing into and entering this electric vehicle industry, but new players coming up. And I think we're also privileged to have here one of them, Mr. Hans de Boer from BETTERPLACE. So I'm very curious to hear about what's your model, because as far as I know, you don't manufacture vehicles, you don't manufacture batteries, but there's a whole bunch of other things that you do, and probably the greatest innovation has been the business model. So if you can give us...
Yes, I can, of course. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, a few elements. I think a few of them have already been said. I think if you would do market research today, you will find quite some interest. A lot of current drivers are interested because they see the advantage of driving electric. So what our innovation basically is that we look at what would make it possible to have larger scale electric driving. And there are 3 key elements of that. First of all, of course, it's convenience for the driver. How can we make an electrical car as convenient and preferable even more convenient as a current car today? And secondly, of course, it has to be for large scale adoption, it also has to be economical. It has to be at least competitive and preferable even at lower cost for certain segments. And thirdly, I think is also not to underestimate, I think, is for early adopters, it also has to be clearly more clean than our current cars. So that is actually the solution we started with, and we try, that's the problem we started with, and we are working on a solution for all those 3 elements. If you first look at the convenience of the driver, then first of all, you have to recognize that batteries have a short range compared to petrol. So the way we are working on that is, first of all, to add communication to the car so that you can help the driver any moment and you can make sure that you process the data so that you can make it more convenient for the driver. Another element, of course, is charging. A car has to be charged, and I think we have to do that as smart as possible. So the solution we work on is that, in principle, every night the car is fully charged. Most cars have a range of, let's say, 150 kilometers. We know also that for 98% of all the trips and all the day trips, that's sufficient. but there is also sometimes longer-term driving. And we have looked at various solutions, from range extender to fast charging, and also to exchanging batteries. And we came to the conclusion that, at least in the early days, and things will change over time, that fast charging is difficult, but it impacts the lifetime of the battery a lot, and it takes also still half an hour to charge 80 minutes in most cases. And actually changing a battery is not that complex, and you don't have to do it that often. For an average driver, it's only once a month. So we have implemented actually a few battery exchange stations, and one of them, for instance, in Tokyo, where we have driven with taxis. And actually, it's not even a high-tech solution. It's a pretty robotic standard solution that you can deploy. Economical is also important part of the solution. And our basic model is that the car manufacturer produces a car. There is a battery manufacturing producing a battery. That's not something we want to change. But there's a lot of uncertainty, of course. Does this all work? What's the cost? What's the uncertainty of the battery? And our basic package that we will provide in countries like Denmark and Israel and other countries where we will start our offering is that we, apart from the car, we package everything. So the customer gets a battery, gets electricity, gets a charge pot at home, a charge pot at work, is allowed to use battery exchange, is allowed to use fast charging where it is available, gets a communication device in the electrical vehicle. We make sure that all the information is on the display, on the computer within the car. And the way we charge that is a little bit like a mobile phone. You pay per, not per minute, but you pay per kilometer. And because if you aggregate all that cost together, it's actually above 15 or 20,000 kilometers. It depends a little bit per country. There are different incentives. An electrical car can be actually price competitive. But it is on the aggregation level. It's not on piece by piece. So working together with partners and packaging everything together can make it a very easy service for the customer and can also make it price competitive. And intelligence in the network is also important, and I think a good example is, in this case, is Denmark. In Denmark, 22% of all energy produced is produced by wind energy. This is, of course, an irregular pattern. It doesn't go 1 hour and the wind blows and then it stops. It actually goes almost on a minute-by-minute basis. And the computer in the car and the control center, you can look at electrical vehicles in our solution as intelligent devices, driving computers if you want, allows us the possibility to basically absorb all the extra wind energy generated. And in the case of Denmark, that's a lot because sometimes total wind generation is above total consumption of the whole country. And together with, in this case, with Dong, with a large utility in Denmark, we basically what we do is, because we know that every car has to be charged about 2 hours every day on average, and a normal car drives less than 2 hours and it's parked for more than 22 hours per day, we basically use the peak of this wind energy to load the cars. And in that way, we can also demonstrate, first of all, it's cheap because this is overcapacity. And secondly, we can demonstrate to the driver that actually we are helping to make it clean and combine it with renewable energy. So that's a little bit of our model. It's partly technical, it's a lot of partnerships. And it's partly also trying to be innovative in terms of an economical model to make it attractive for the normal driver, not the one that can afford a car, but no more than the cost of today.
Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting. In at the end, it's easy to use, and how can we make the drivers, their lives easier? But you touched on a very hot topic, which is the performance, specifically batteries. And my question, and probably to the OEMs that we have here, Nissan or Tesla Motors, is how is this solved, and how do you see this in the future evolving? You know, the fact that both in the car, batteries will be more reliable, and also from the infrastructure point of view, will we have thousands of points of recharge, or how will it look like in the following years? I don't know if Mr. Paturet, you want to go with this, or?
Yeah, Guillermo, I think the question is, where do you see the starting point? Our view is that lithium-ion is actually a quantum leap versus what is available today. So I'm not sure, do we see lithium-ion as the starting point, or do we see it within the development of batteries a step? We think at Nissan this was the necessary step that triggered mass market introduction. So we're ready. That's the view as far as the battery. This is it. This is the starting point. And therefore, the idea of anxiety, and I think there was a very good comment in the previous group about learning to live with the car. And this gentleman had an electric vehicle for 8 years and clearly had demonstrated how it became part of his life. So I think we're looking very much into this change of mindset. And I think quite a few people are ready for that, want to participate, want to be actors, and take this technology to the next level. So we see it really as the necessary and the starting point now.
Right. So Cristiano, are we thinking about customers that have to change their minds? Are your customers special in this sense? Is the car, I guess it's high performance car, so battery and the performance of the battery has to be very, very important.
It's interesting because our customer right now are of course very open-minded, and therefore they don't suffer from this range anxiety, of course. But let's put it this way: our aim is to develop the products and develop the market, regardless from a further development of the infrastructure. I totally agree with Olivier that we need a sort of change of culture, because actually the technology is there, so it's available. As it was said, the normal range driven by any average customer is very, very limited. So they don't need all the range that is embedded in the car today in their normal daily use. So even if when we are offering electric vehicles with ranges which are increasing, of course, that will be much more than they need on a daily basis. So it's more a cultural shift. Our aim is, of course, to bring it to a larger audience, regardless of what happens in terms of infrastructure. If the infrastructure develops, that's very nice. That is going to accelerate the development of electric vehicles. But we cannot rely exclusively on the development of this infrastructure. And I think that the change of culture of the people will come together with more and more car manufacturers bringing the product, really, and therefore communicating to the masses. Then there's another point. The automotive market as a whole is not a monolithic market, is divided in different segments. Some segments suffer a bit more of this range anxiety, some others don't. So those other segments will develop faster, will develop first, and will show to the remaining segments that it's not really a big issue. It can be done. And therefore the market will develop gradually.
That's great. And what's your view, Raul-David, on the... well, Hans, you want to add something?
Yeah, you go ahead. I mean, follow the order. It's fine.
No, I was asking.
Okay. Yeah, I think on batteries, I think that the way we look at it, what at least the part of the value that we try to create is very much to do with battery management. Actually, the smart solution that we have is very much related to managing the battery. And the reason for that is, let's start with the economical part of it. The cost of electric driving is a large part of it, apart from buying the car, is actually the cost of the battery. If you take a current battery, let's say 150 kilometers, and let's say that the battery has 2,000 cycles, which is 300,000 kilometers. If you then calculate back the cost for charge infrastructure, electricity and battery, you will easily find out that the battery is more than half of the cost. So the key question, of course, to make a car cost economical is to make sure that you use that capacity in that battery as much as you can. And also to make sure that the battery doesn't become too big in the car, because if you have a even bigger battery than a range of 150 kilometers, you can do that, of course, in a car in the high price ranges, but if you do that in a car where you have to be price competitive, the car itself becomes too expensive to buy, but also the cost per kilometer becomes too high. So there's clearly a balance between how much range can you put in a car and what cost can you allow, depending on the segment that you have. The innovation we try to add to that is first of all to make sure that you manage the battery as good as possible. That's a part of the onboard computer, that you basically try to collect information on the battery. How is it doing? Does it need maintenance? How can it be charged? Because a battery is a little bit like a bottle of wine. It has to be charged differently when it is young than when it gets old. You have to treat it with care. It's very expensive. And another element we try to add is the battery swap is not only for the convenience, it's also for making sure that you pool the batteries. That if you have somebody driving 10,000 kilometers per year, and let's say a taxi driving 50,000 kilometers per year, and you pool all these batteries in a big pool, that the average goes up. Because there's also an element of lifetime in a battery. Most batteries we expect will last for about 8 years. And after that, the lifetime, it can still be used for other purposes, but not in a vehicle. So basically, it's a consumable good, and you have to make sure that you manage that consumable good for the convenience of the customer, but also economically. So I think electrical cars, to a large extent, and I think that's something where the car manufacturer and the utilities and us as a kind of service provider, I think, have a common interest. We have to make sure that it's all managed well. And I think that's batteries. I mean, that's not my research, but the research done by the larger battery manufacturers, and for instance, also the one used by Renault and Nissan, but also others. That batteries will improve, but it is not like they will improve. Suddenly, they are half the cost and double the capacity. It is a stepwise improvement, with an expectation that around 8 years' time you have double the capacity in the battery, but no more than that. That's already probably optimistic. So we have to live with that slow improvement of the battery in terms of cost and energy density, and we have to make sure that we manage it well. So it is in that respect, it's a high-tech management system that we together have to make sure it works for the favor of the driver.
Okay, so we will not have the ideal battery next year, but we will have at least systems that manage the way we use batteries in an intelligent way. So, Raul-David, what?
I'd like to add a little bit about batteries as well, if that's okay. So our approach is a little bit different. We're looking at ultra small vehicles. So we're looking at ways to be able to reduce the size of the battery packs, to be able to give a certain optimized range for the vehicle. So about 100 kilometers of travel for about a 15-minute rapid charge time. So by reducing the size of the battery pack, you reduce the weight of the vehicle, and you also reduce the cost incurred to be able to sell the vehicle. And we are looking at ways to be able to do this in a mobility on-demand system, which is the shared use system that I talked about a little bit earlier, where you would have about 5 charges per day, rapid charging, which basically means that your cycle life of the battery is about 15 cycles in a year. So that's about half the time of a regular battery life, but it would probably drop to about 90% state of charge. So within our model of the mobility on-demand system, we actually are trying to repurpose our batteries as a part of our UPS systems for future rapid charging strategies. So using the batteries that have been depleted from the vehicles as a source to be able to store the renewable energy from intermittent power, or possibly even to get energy from DC fuel cells to be charged within the UPS systems. So our cycle life basically allows us to be able to extend from the 1 to 2 year range for about 1,500 to 3,000 cycles to a range where we were actually able to use the battery life all the way down to about 50% state of charge, because the batteries have been reallocated no longer as mobile battery units, but instead are static units that are a part of the infrastructure. So part of our philosophy is to try to take out as much of the infrastructure that's normally seen inside of a vehicle to create something that's a very lightweight, ultra small vehicle, and then use all of that infrastructure that would normally be in the vehicle and put it into the infrastructure of the city, where we see the repurposing of the batteries.
So I don't know if you mentioned, so rapid charging is, we're talking about how long?
Rapid charging is a strategy that allows you to be able to do what we call somewhere between 4 to 5C. It's 10 to 15 minutes worth of charge time. And the way that we're doing it is we're using A123 batteries. They're a lithium nanophosphate technology that has a very low internal resistance, which allows you to be able to charge and discharge the batteries very rapidly without any destruction to the internal chemistry of the battery, because they don't heat up in the process of applying this large amount of power. And then in the rapid charging strategy, we're also looking at ways to be able to do this both AC and DC. Most of the level 3 rapid charging that's being implemented now in Japan with TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, is all DC, because it is an easier way to be able to charge directly to the DC batteries. And there might be able to have a future infrastructure outside of the traditional alternating current infrastructure, which we see today that's charging traditional cars, where you don't have to convert directly from AC to DC, but instead within this network of DC grid technology, you would be able to charge directly from one battery UPS system to another. And this was a debate that was had a long time ago by Nicholas Tesla and Thomas Edison about which of the two infrastructures would be available in the future. And it looks like there might be the possibility of bringing back DC power infrastructure in the city.
Okay, so
thank you.
DC comes back. Thank you very much. So let me come back to what I mentioned before about whether the electric vehicle or the introduction of the electric vehicle will actually change the whole industry, automotive industry as we know it today. Well, is it going to happen? Are they going to be new players? We see there are some already there. And especially, what role will the traditional big players in the industry play? So, Mr. Paturet, if you want to tell us a bit about how, from Renault-Nissan, are you actually approaching this introduction of the electric vehicle? How do you see in the next 5-10 years for all your stakeholders, both your customers or the regions where the markets where you're active, and also internally in your own company?
Yeah, we see ourselves in phase one. Phase one is launch the car, take EVs to market. I think all of us are in this race, and the market is in total buoyancy. I mean, everywhere in Europe is in tension. Phase one, yes, there will be new partners because of the way that we're entering the market. Home charging. Who is going to install the home chargers in the garages and so on? Infrastructure. Who is going to build all these charging points? Who is going to install electromobility operator? Who is going to look into this world of providing electricity, providing services? And we have some very good example with us today. So in the launch phase, already we see some key elements of new partners. And I like the word that Hans was mentioning, partnership. Is what is interesting in today's launch phase is the idea of partnering and having public offices, utilities, OEMs, people that usually never talked, utilities and OEM talk together and partner. So this is phase one. Now, looking ahead, we see a phase two where we attain a certain critical mass of EV in the market. Then the interesting point that we foresee is then the driver becomes an actor on the grid. When you think about it, the driver is actually driving energy, is moving energy. So we'll be moving energy from point A to point B. The driver is becoming an actor, offsetting in Denmark the off-peak situation of the wind farms and other situation in Portugal, where probably offsetting the hydroelectric system. So the phase two, which people call V2G, vehicle to grid, smart grid, will eventually come and will take with it a new set of integrators, people that are capable of integrating the whole system, vehicle communication to from downstream to upstream, also from the utilities down to vehicle. I think we hear every day in conferences and stories about that. This is phase 2, and this is where I think a lot of new players will also join the race.
Okay, so 2 phases, maybe one where we have to start looking for something that we had not done in the past, which is partnership. So anybody wants to add on partnership? Don't know, Cristiano or Hans. Hans, maybe you can tell us a bit about the experience you have.
I can tell a little bit about it. Yeah, I think you have to start understanding that the total cost of car and the value of the whole chain of driving a car is a very large part of our economy. And also the current chain is actually quite complex if you think about it, how we get oil and we refine it and we bring it to the car. But we are used to that. I mean, it has been developed over the last 100 years. And now electrical car is very different. And it's probably not more complex, but it's simply complex because it's new. It's a new type of value chain that we have to create, and it's not absolutely clear who's exactly doing what. But I think one thing is clear, like in the current value chain, there's nobody who can do it alone. So I think you have to work very closely together. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for new players because a lot of it is very different than the current value chain in the vehicles. So first of all, the large opportunities are for, of course, if you produce batteries, this is a golden opportunity. Because if you calculate the total cost, suppose all cars or half of the cars would be electric, enormous opportunity. And it's quite high technology, so that's the first partner. You have to work together with battery manufacturers. You have to do that as a car manufacturer, but also for us, like we are more in the smart charging, service provisioning. For us, it's equally true. We also have to work very closely together that the battery management system works well within the system. Secondly, of course, you have the utilities. I mean, you have to charge these cars. And altogether, all the cars together, is an enormous amount of electricity. And the cost of additional investment in an infrastructure in every country, in Spain, in Portugal, in wherever you take it, is enormous, unless you do it in a smart way. So automatically there is a very high interest of the kind of work we do and to partner with utilities. And we also actually are doing that. We're doing projects where we jointly understand what does it mean, this smart load management. How do you do that? What kind of information do you have exchanged between parties? So it's a very intense cooperation that you have to develop. And I think with the OEMs, it's exactly the same. I mean, the cars are very different. I think within an OEM, I'm sure that some of you are much more knowledgeable that there's a lot of change. It's not the same car. And I think the car is only marketable if the whole system works. So I think there's a lot of common interest. How do we present this car? For which segments do we do that? How do we distribute this car? I mean, the maintenance is very different in this car. So also it has a big impact in the current way we bring cars through dealers and lease companies to the market. It's a big impact, I think. And I think it requires good joint understanding and working together because if not, then I think it will be more difficult to develop the market. And I think the same is true for new players. I think in every element there are new players. Utilities can do some of it, but there will be room for new players. I think with OEMs the same. I think a good example, I think, is standing next to me. It's a big OEM taking an enormous risk also by producing electrical vehicles early stage, which can help, I think, for the future of the market. But I think there's also room, like for Tesla, like new players, because the cars are very different, and you can have new concepts. So I think it's a challenge, and for some companies will also be a threat. But I think, what I learned by two years intensively doing this across Europe, that you can definitely not do this alone. You need a few good partners to do it, because the challenges are too big else.
That's interesting. You want to add something, Cristiano?
of course, coming from the manufacturer position, we have a slightly different point of view, but then that's the exciting part of being in a completely new, not completely, but significantly new sector. I strongly believe that car manufacturers, so-called OEM, have a pretty long history of integrating new technologies and bundling them into the product, and that's what happened in the past 100 years. And they succeeded in doing that. I mean, if we look at the cars we have right now, they are an incredible concentration of technology. But one of the most relevant things is that they grabbed technology from everywhere, but they didn't want to rely on somebody else in the management of important parts of the product they are selling to the customer. This is because the product is very expensive. A car is the second most expensive thing we buy in our lifetime. And therefore, car manufacturers usually didn't want to rely on third parties in the development, in their relationship with the customer. That's why I believe that car manufacturers will push for higher range as much as they can. If the forecast of doubling the battery capacity in 10 years is going to become a reality, really, well, that would be exciting because we are planning to launch a car in 2 years' time with a range of 480 kilometers. Right now, the Roadster is 340. If we double 340, that's 700 kilometers, but it's more than anybody leaves in 99.999% of their days. So I believe that in terms of partnership, the partnership which will work better will be the partnership among car manufacturers. That's the strategy we're pursuing, and we have a partnership with the Daimler Group, a partnership recently signed with Toyota. Partnership with other kind of companies, like utilities, for example, I'm not sure they will be sustainable in the long future. Now, they are functional to develop the market now, but in reality, I see them more as enablers than anything else. I mean, if you think of the boom of the motor industry after the Second World War, it was enabled by the construction of highways in many countries, by the development of petrol station network along those highways. But those were not partners of car manufacturers. They were enabler of the development of a market. That's why I strongly believe in the capacity of car manufacturing, the ability of the car manufacturer to integrate all the technology to make a better product for the customer, which make it possible for the customer to use it regardless of other conditions posed by other suppliers, like, for example, utilities.
Okay, Olivier, have you or will you partner with utilities?
Yeah, I think especially, again, it goes back to the launch phase and the urgency of today's situation. So the need for partnership in that launch phase, I think, is a little bit more critical. In Spain, we already announced a partnership with Acciona and Endesa, in Italy, Enel, A2A. So I think this process is ongoing. We're trying to bring some consensus, common understanding. Why? Because we want to make sure that the road ahead is people understand what is coming ahead. So I think there is a need for some partnership. And again, the idea is build the necessary steps for people to feel comfortable with the technology. But I think there's also not only the utilities, but we didn't talk about car sharing. But car sharing is another example, because increasing the range is something, but why not start sharing a car? That already is a good starting point. And here again in Spain, we announced when I was in Madrid with the mayor there thinking about car sharing. Barcelona is already operating car sharing schemes. So I think there's a couple of initiatives linked to services, car sharing, extending the range, partnering with utilities. We see everything in the basket of opportunities, especially in the launch phase. Yeah.
Okay, so I pick it from there, from the car sharing, because I think it's very interesting what will happen in the future with a new model or system of driving. So in terms of design of the cars, will we have, or are we designing new cars because they're electric, or for these new kind of services, or for the in the case of a BETTERPLACE system, or are we electrifying the existing vehicles. We're talking about cars all the time, but it could be other types of vehicles. So, Raul-David, I don't know if you can...
Sure, I'd love to fill the question. There's going to be an opportunity for both segments to be able to continue. Of course, the OEMs are going to be able to continue to develop electric vehicles for long-range facilities, but there's also going to be a new market that's going to allow for startup companies to be able to create niche vehicles that will be able to provide solutions for the future. And some of these ideas basically are to be able to look at vehicles, at least within the urban environment, that are designed for the city versus designing the city around vehicles. So one of our vehicles, which is the folding city car, is a vehicle that adapts its footprint to be able to save space inside of a city. It's fully electric, has wheel robot technology inside of each one of the corner units that enables you to be able to sense your environment around you and therefore create a more safe vehicle that knows where pedestrians are, knows where other vehicles are next to you as well, and can also be able to interconnect between the different vehicles to allow you to be able to have a social network inside of this new platform. So for the future, there always will be an opportunity for us to be able to dream big and have sports vehicles, and also to be able to find traditional four-passenger vehicles that you might find for solutions for the family. But there also would be the extension, which is basically the idea that you would not necessarily need to own the vehicle, and in a part of a car-sharing platform, you actually would be able to just pick up a vehicle anywhere in the city and drop it off somewhere else. So you don't have to worry about the responsibility and the liabilities of parking your car and looking for parking spots, because everything will actually be connected directly to the vehicle itself and the information that's shared with the vehicle, such that the vehicles are now a part of a new mobility system, which we had talked about a little bit earlier. And
it's great. Don't know if anybody else wants to add on this. It's okay. I think we have time for a last question and probably for one or two answers. And it's a must question in the context that we're living today, the economic and financial crisis. And what we are seeing is a reduction in consumption in general and in demand for any type of goods. And it seems that this is not just something that we will live during these years, but it will stay there for a longer time, meaning that people will probably be happier with less. How does this impact the new or the businesses that you're getting into it? And I see Hans that is very eager to reply.
Yeah, very shortly. I think, first of all, I think we have to be realistic. I mean, electrical car development goes fastest in countries like China. And I don't think you see a reduction, at least I haven't noticed it, there's a reduction in China. So I think that the electrical car development and a lot of the we are talking about, we will see that first happening larger scale, I think, in China. And the advantage of that is that that will help, I think, the scale for larger scale manufacturing from parties to exist. So I think some of the innovations will come from Asia. And I think this is a good example of that. And we, of course, we can leverage their scale of development and their growth. And so if our market in Europe, for instance, would slow down a bit, which it does at the moment for cars, then I don't think it necessarily means that there is no room for innovation, or only it goes differently than we are used to, I think.
Great. Okay, so we ran out of time. I think and I hope that you got interesting ideas from the table. I thank you all very much for being here, and thank you very much.